Welcome back to another episode of Black Alert Podcast, your melanated references to all things Trek across four quadrants. I am a time guardian, not to be confused with the Space Force or Guardians of the Galaxy. And we are here with the Bridge crew. Speak up.
What's up, y'all? It's Tia.
Hey, this is Travis.
Hey, this is Shaniqua.
Hey, this is Grace.
Black alert. Black alert. Black alert.
Today we have my favorite Andorian Twitter Trek mans, Mr. Noah Averbach-Katz, here.
I'm jealous of that mic, Noah.
I know you should be. It's
This is
really
what
nice.
real podcasters
Yeah.
look like. Got equipment and stuff.
Yeah, they set him up good. He's like, I'm ready.
I spent way too much money on it, and literally the only thing I've used it for is going on people's podcasts. So it's been a worthy investment.
Well, good.
I see you've been making your rounds, so it's kind of dope.
Yeah, I feel like I really want to try and be a part of as much of this kind of stuff as I can, and I don't know, I feel like the reason why Star Trek is around today is because of people like you guys, like just like making your fucking thing that you love, and I just want to support it. You know what I mean? I'm here for it because that's the reason why Star Trek is here. It started with people who are just like, I'm gonna do a convention because nobody told me not to.
Nice.
What I do love to do is trek out with other Trekkies, so I want you to have that moment.
Absolutely.
If he says it's totally fine, I'm just gonna go ahead. Can you please tell your wife
Yes.
that my sister Tilly, whose name is actually Tilly, biggest fan, biggest fan. Okay.
I will absolutely tell from one Tilly to another that she's doing the name justice. That makes me very happy. Yeah, Mary will love to hear that. That's awesome.
And there goes our script. So everybody looks at their questions, work them in when you can. We usually do a lot of free falling, so let's start talking. We know you're a Trekkie. I dug this out just for
I'm
you.
seeing it. I love it. I'm really, really into it. I was gonna say something, but I just thought I'd just like let it actually be totally like a normal thing you just wear every day. I want to imagine that for myself.
Approaching Star Trek Discovery, we know your beautiful and illustrious wife, the beautiful Tilly, aka Killy, that wap wap. For me, when my first episode and I saw her, I was like, I can be a Starfleet officer. That was my moment. But for you, you already told Forbes of how you helped her, get ready for this position. How did it work for you?
It's so funny. It's so funny in that Forbes article because I read it and I was upstairs while she was down here recording that interview. And in the article, she's like, she walked in this dress, and I said, absolutely not. And how I tell the story is I was like, baby, I would never, ever say this about anything, but I just have the smallest, tiniest suggestion, but it's not a big deal, but just like one suggestion. Maybe just try something different on. I just love how our versions of that story are so totally, totally different. It's amazing. Gosh, what am I answering? I don't know. I forgot. I already went off on a tangent.
How was your experience becoming part of Star Trek Discovery?
Oh my God.
Did you ever be like, hey, he wants to be on the show? Or was it, did you have to go through the whole audition process? How did it work for you?
It was interesting because, early on when Mary was on the show, like very, very early on, it was like the first episode of After Treks, and they were up in Toronto and filming, and I was was on set watching the film, and then they all got into a van and they drove over to this production studio, and I was sitting next to Akiva Goldsmith, who was a producer on the show, and I was sort of just like in full fan dork mode and like showing everybody the photos of me at conventions, and like everyone was like, cool, that's really neat, mister, like way to go. But I showed Akiva, And Akiva pulled out his phone and started showing me pictures of him in conventions in like the early 80s. And so we just started going back and forth about how cool it was and all this stuff. And he was like, oh, we got to get you on the show. We'll like put you in the background. Like, we'll just throw a mask on you. We'll throw you in a uniform, put you in the background. I was like, oh, hell yes, absolutely. I'll do that. And so then we were at like a sort of after dinner meet and greet or whatever, and me and Akiva were still like just like talking about our favorite episodes or whatever, or how cool it was he got to work on a movie or something. And one of the people who worked at CBS like sort of came up to me while we were talking and was like, I know you from something. And I was like, I mean, probably not. And she's like, no, I do. You were on an episode of The Good Fight. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like on one episode, I played a total jerk, and like, yeah, that's awesome. And I was sitting in between Akiva and Alex Kurtzman, and Alex Kurtzman had sort of been like nodding along with our conversation, being like, listen to these two dorks talk. It's very fun. But then he's like, oh, like you're a real actor. Like you are a guy who's been on CBS All Access before the show even existed. So I sort of like got his attention there. And then I auditioned maybe like a year later for Spock, which was funny because it was like secret named Tom the Andorian. And reading it as a Star Trek fan, I was like, this is not an Andorian. This is a Vulcan, and I'm basically 100% sure it's Spock. I don't know who you think you're fooling. And I didn't get that, and I think back on that, and you know, Ethan just does such an amazing job, and I think back on like, I was so stressed out if my Andorian was Andorian enough. I could not imagine like what would have happened to me if I was stressed about my Spock being Spock enough. I mean, I just would have like just melted into a puddle. And Ethan just does such a good job. But I sort of like sent in a tape, and they really liked that audition. And then I was up in Toronto again with Mary while she was shooting season 3, and my manager was like, hey, there's an audition. I flew back to New York for it. And they were like, yeah, that's it. You got it. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And it was just such an amazing thing, you know, getting to go on the set and like being a part of it. It was so much fun because there is this worry of like, what if I have a horrible time? You know, what if I like go do this thing and the curtain is pulled back and like I hate doing it and everyone's a jerk and nobody cares. And I've been on set and I know the energy's good, but maybe it like, you know, won't live up to my extremely high expectations. But it totally did. It blew those expectations out of the water. And one of the things that was so nice is like everyone on set, you know, the directors, the camera guys, everyone working is like excited to be making Star Trek, even if they're not like major Trekkies. I think it just feels really cool to get to be a part of like such an iconic franchise. Exactly. History. Yeah. And I think like I had been on set so much because anytime that I got the opportunity to just sit and watch the filming or like walk the hallways of the thing, see if there was anything I can steal or a picture I can take that I'm not supposed to, like I was there, I was doing it. And so everybody sort of on set kind of already knew me and knew what a big fan I was. And so they were just like so excited for me. They were like, oh my God, like it's happening. Can you believe this? So it was just really fun because I think it sort of took that experience of being a part of history, being a part of the franchise to like the next level where it's like, oh, we get to see in person like how geeked this guy is. So it was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, I'm wilding out for you. I'm like, wow, that
I
is
told
like
you guys, this is why I walk around downtown Toronto, just because, hoping that I bump into somebody, wander onto or near some set. It's very exciting.
Get her in, Nora, get in.
I could go visit Aga Khan today. Sure, why not? Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Travis, you had a good question?
Hopefully it's a good one. So Noah, I watch Discovery every week with my 9-year-old daughter. You are her first Andorian. You know,
that's a lot of pressure, Travis. I just suddenly I got into like a cold sweat. I'm like, oh, the first Andorian she's ever meeting. Oh my God.
Exactly, right. And it's funny to me because she has a big mop of curly hair and she is a Tilly fiend. And I mean, just absolute, because she's a STEM kid. She's like, oh, I'm, you know, science and everything. So Tilly is like her everything.
That's amazing.
And then, you showed up and she's like into like the whole Andorian thing. So then I had to go back and show her, the Jeffrey Combs performances on Enterprise and all that other stuff. So you've set the tone for her.
Wow.
So that kind of leads me to the question, what set the tone for you? Like, how did you become the Star Trek fan?
That's such a good question. My mom was just like a massive, massive Trekkie. And, a lot of people ask me, like, what was the first introduction to Trek? And it was like, there was no introduction. It was just like a part of the house. It was like, it was just of the family. There was, action figures or pictures or whatever all over the house. I grew up sort of watching Voyager as a kid when I was probably your daughter's age. And then when I was around 12 or 13 was sort of when Enterprise started. So my mom would throw these like Star Trek parties, which were just like basically watch parties before watch parties existed. And so me and all my friends would come over and do the coolest thing you can possibly do at 13, which is all watch Star Trek Enterprise together. And she would write up little quizzes of the episode, and whoever got the most answers right of like what happened in the quiz would get a Star Trek prize. So she was training us very early to like focus on all the
That's
random
pretty cool.
little details, like what was that background character's name? What's the name of the drink that they're, and she would just sort of scoop up me and my friends and take us to Star Trek conventions before we could really like consider what we were getting ourselves into. And once we were there, we obviously just had so much fun, just getting to like buy stuff and then watch these really funny, amazing people who I had seen on TV just like talk, and it's just so much fun. And it's just kind of always been that way. And now whenever I go home, for the holidays, obviously not this year, but like in the past, it's like we put on Deep Space Nine. We watch all these episodes we haven't seen together. So it is just like so much a part of the family now, especially now with, with Mary and with me, it's just like there's no extracting our family from Star Trek,
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So, Star Trek has always been lauded for its inclusion and diversity. What's it like being on a show that has as much representation as Discovery has? Are there any areas you'd like to see more of it? Or have you learned things about different cultures or et cetera?
It's amazing, especially this, Soneqa's two love interests have both been people of color, which is amazing. David.
And my name is Shaniqua, so
Shaniqua and Soneqa, gotcha.
Yes.
Amazing. And that's been incredible. I think one of the things that I'm learning more about and the cast is learning about is, trans and non-binary representation with Ian and Blue coming in, and that has been so exciting to kind of just watch and be excited for. Ian and Blue are just like two amazing individuals, and I'm just so excited for them, and I'm really excited for the Trek community to get to know them better, because I just think they have they have the sort of Trek ethos in them in an amazing way, in a way that actually is like almost more revolutionary, more forward thinking than we're used to. You know what I mean? It's actually like I think they have the ability to really like challenge what infinite diversity and infinite combination means in a really exciting way that I'm thrilled about. It's great to see so many people of color and women behind the camera directing episodes. I think they've done a really good job with that level of inclusion and and I think the other thing is having Anthony and Wilson, two LGBTQ icons, be a part of the show, be connected in the story with Blue and Ian is just like super powerful, because they bring so much history and story with them wherever they go. It's just really amazing to watch them actively pass the torch, to watch them actively support and raise up the kind of next generation, if you will, of these people, and also the way in which it's not like one-sided, you know. I can really see Anthony really taking in a lot from Blue and from Ian and just being so inspired and re-inspired by them. So I just think it's been really active, you know. It's been really active, and they've done a really good job, you know. I saw some of the casting breakdowns for Strange New Worlds that were floating around on the internet, which may or may not be true, and you know, they're definitely trying to continue that as well, and I hope they do. And I know that, you know, Alex and all the people at Secret Hideout, this is like very much on the forefront of their approach to creating those shows, which is really inspiring. And it can always get better, you know, it can always get better. So I think what I really appreciate and encourage, you know, is to not feel like, oh, we did it, you know, we did it, we're good, like, way to go, we pat ourselves on the back. You know, there's still a ton of learning that needs to be done, both in terms of race and sexual orientation identity, you know. I think that, like, a lot of the creatives are a little bit more experienced with that than maybe some of like the local Toronto crew. And there's no reason that the sort of level of engagement that the cast and kind of main creatives participate in shouldn't extend to every single person on that set, regardless of sort of the level of the hierarchy or whatever, you know. So you know, there's nothing specific I have in mind in terms of like, oh, I would really love to see that in terms of representation. But I do think it's the idea of, you know, not stopping, you know, not saying we did it. I also think, you know, I read the script when, you know, Adira identifies themselves as non-binary, and when I read it, I was actually a little like, well, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't. Is this really going to land in a meaningful way? But when I watched the show, when I saw how Blue and Anthony handled it and the way that it was handled by everyone, I actually was just so appreciative of the fact that that identity was not a morality tale. You know, it was not something that we have to keep at arm's distance in order to understand. It was actually very, very empowering and inspiring to just say, like, this is who I am. Here's the information. Anthony takes it. We move on. You know, we didn't need like a full, you know, but can it work? Is it real kind of thing, you know, because we're not in 1992 anymore. And I just really felt like that was so expertly handled and so brilliantly played by Ian and Blue. By Anthony and Blue. So I don't know, you know, and I'm excited to see where it goes, and let's keep going, you know.
I like that.
I appreciate that too, because we actually interviewed someone last week who was non-binary. And one of the things that they said on the podcast was this was the first time they saw themselves in Star Trek. And they said that, yes, there's been other non-binary characters before, but they were aliens.
Yes.
They were never human. And so a light bulb went off in all of our heads. We were like, wow, we just learned something new. And I'm so happy to see that Star Trek is really embracing more and more as time goes by. I mean, as you can see, this is an all Black podcast. And so we're very much discussing diversity in the fandom as well as the show.
Yeah, you know, I just think it's like a really interesting thing because, you know, in a lot of ways, Discovery can't exist in the old model of like sort of a beginning, middle, and end of like sort of a morality idea. That's for a lot of reasons. That's not just like, you know, story reasons, that's money reasons, that's, you know, streaming reasons, whatever. But I do think what it allows Star Trek to do is move away from, you know, saying, is this thing right or wrong? Is it being handled right or wrong? Because I think a lot of those questions that were being asked early on in Star Trek, we don't need to keep asking that. You know, we have the answer. We don't need to keep, you know, dancing around it. And we are past that. And so what I think it's allowed the show to do is be able to explore, things that are complex without an answer, like, a relationship between a mother and daughter, or, kind of where you exist in a hierarchy on a ship, or what it means to be separated from your home or your culture, with a new group of people, with a new set of experiences, bringing that both as, the character, but also as the actor as well. And I think that's been a really, really exciting journey to watch the show go on.
I've been enjoying watching it and the subtle nuances of how the show tackles all our issues that we face daily. Tia, I know you've been waiting to ask a question.
Oh, mine is more of a non-serious one.
That's fine.
Imagine for the second you were given the green light to create your own Star Trek series. What would it look like?
I feel like gosh, all right, my own Star Trek series.
Ooh, this is a
Oh, I
good
think
one.
I want more LeVar Burton. I feel like this is where I need to
Yes.
really make this push. I've been sort of I don't know. I'm not totally clear on why we don't have more LeVar. I don't know if that's just it hasn't happened yet, or if he's not interested, or if there's something else going on. I don't know. I want more. I feel like what I would want to see is like I would watch a Picard LeVar Burton style show. You know what I mean? Where he's really the sort of lead, because I feel like I love Geordi, and I feel like really of all those kind of next gen characters, he's the one who I want to know more about, And I also think that one place, actually going back to the earlier conversation, one place where Star Trek has been good but could continue is in disability representation. And I think the way that they handled his blindness was so expertly done, in a way that he, that the character wasn't ashamed of it, that it was very much a part of who he was. I really love that. It really resonated with me, and I think that there's a lot more to be gained by exploring those stories. And I think, like, on top of the character being such a good representation of that, I just think, obviously, I mean, I'm not, this is obvious, but like, LeVar is an amazing human being and a fucking living legend, and like, there's nobody who I would feel more comfortable telling those kind of stories than in his hands. So that, I don't know, that's my sort of, I'm building a soapbox around that.
Yes.
I'm trying it out.
I loved it. I loved that
Yes,
deal.
you
Well, I
listening?
mean,
You are
wasn't
not alone.
Wasn't LeVar Burton in Voyager? So we know he becomes a captain, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean,
He's timeless, I think. So, I think like there are stories there.
absolutely.
And so it could be really awesome to see, to find out more of what happens to Geordi. We know Troy and Riker, what's going on with them. We know what's happened to Data. So there's a space for it. And also, you're right, he's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I think we went
Sorry,
all
go
the way off about how awesome he is, I think, like in the introductory episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
all
like,
the way.
he's a legend, you know what I mean? Like, LeVar is a legend on so many different levels, and he's also an amazing actor, like Geordi is like kind of an incredible performance, and I want to see more.
Wow.
Yep.
I don't know if I
that
can
was
add
left
to that.
field for me. That was left field for me. I did not see that bus that hit me. Grace, go.
I'm absolutely gobsmacked. I don't know that. Sorry, no, seriously. I was so wrapped up in what he was saying, I completely forgot where we are in the script.
Noah, I don't know if you've had the
Aaron,
chance to play Star Trek
sorry.
Online, but Geordi has a huge role in a couple of episodes,
I
and it's
have-
actually LeVar.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. See, I don't know. I feel like for Star Trek, the property, there's just such untapped potential, even from like a business side. You know what I mean? That it just is like, "Arr, come on, let's
We've
go."
never gotten the chance to see any of the characters like grow up, like go from I'm serving under this guy to being the guy,
Yeah.
And I think that would be that's an awesome progression.
I think Lower Decks did a great job of honoring Chief O'Brien.
Yeah.
That was he spanned several iterations of Star Trek, and you got to see him, get promoted, become chief. You got to see him get married and have a daughter. I am all for lineage episodes. Give me a lineage character at any time, and I will appreciate it. With that being said, we're all Trekkies. You've been to conventions. What's the best thing you've gotten? And what is also the best thing you've swiped from?
Oh, yes.
Discovery?
Gosh, I sort of cycle through like my favorite.
Borrowed, liberated.
Repatriated. I like that. I sort of cycle through like my favorite item. A lot of the time, my sort of favorite item is not like the like most expensive or like the most like like one of a kind. It's like the sort of thing that I can secretly use every day that like I'm like, that's Star Trek, and like I use it, so like for a long time I had a very nice like hefty Enterprise bottle opener that I would use like all throughout grad school, and everyone like one time somebody would see it and be like, is that? And I'd be like, and
we're convention fans now. I can't wait.
Yeah, and for a while, my favorite piece, I was like following baseball super closely, and I'm from outside San Francisco, and I had like a San Francisco Giants themed Enterprise like bauble that I was just obsessed with for a while. And right now, I think my main Star Trek piece is this hat, not this hat, but a hat that I bought it's from the Deep Space Nine baseball episode for the 49ers, and I forget what the text says. I think it says find him and kill him, which it's probably my favorite line in all of Star Trek. So that's my current favorite piece, but it'll change. And in terms of taking, I did take, in Scavengers, like in that set, there was just so much just like stuff everywhere that I did take a couple of sort of rusted comm badges. I kept one for myself, and I gave one to my mom, which was very cool. I kept a part of my mask at one point because they have to like, cut it off your face, so I have like the sort of forehead with the little nubs on there, so I kept a mask as well. And then I took a lot of pictures of stuff that I shouldn't that are on my
the pictures. The pictures.
They say cameras, no phones. Don't
exactly. I'm like,
and
oh no,
we're like, yeah, no, I wouldn't.
I'm texting, I swear.
I want to know who's got that Guitar Hero guitar.
Those baskets were so bizarre. I don't know like how that happened, but it was Guitar Hero, but it was also like VCRs. It was truly like if somebody was like, all right, we need to we're setting a movie in like 2055 and all the stuff from like the early 90s is in there, or the early aughts where it's like old DVD players or like, big rounded TVs. And I was like, where did this stuff come from? Like you must just have a basket of like old garbage somewhere that's like square.
Somebody's junk drawer. That is somebody's junk drawer. I promise. It's in their garage. It's a junk drawer.
It was so weird.
Okay. Everybody look at their questions. Pick a good one. Ask it.
No, I'm going to jump in and ask you a relatively serious question. You and I interacted a little bit on Twitter the other day about the insulin for all.
Oh, yes.
And that's important to me because I'm type 2, but I'm a diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, I just wanted to ask, two questions. One, how did you get involved in that? And two, what can we all do to help out the cause?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes back in 2003. And basically,
that's the year I was diagnosed, by the way.
There you go. So back in 2003, 2007, Since that time, the cost of insulin has jumped about 250%, while the formula hasn't changed at all. So in the United States, that's a manufactured pricing crisis. I'm lucky enough to get insurance through me and my wife's union through SAG. So I have medication, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people can't afford it. A lot of people wind up rationing insulin, which is extremely dangerous. And a lot of people can't afford it and they die. And there's just no reason for that, because, you know, this medication is affordable in a lot of other places around the world. In terms of partnering with Insulin for All, it's an organization that I've been sort of following for a while. I think what I really, really like about it is it's an international organization with different chapters throughout the world. So it has 37 state chapters, which are all volunteer run. I was just talking with somebody who runs the Illinois chapter. They were able to put some pricing cap legislation through that's going to go in effect in January, which is really going to save people's lives, or at least make sure that they don't have to choose between buying their groceries and buying their insulin. And they also have chapters all around the world: South Africa, Sudan, Uganda, and in the UK as well, in Europe, you know, places where insulin is free or is affordable. It's important to have advocacy there to make sure it stays that way, because there are definitely people who would like to change that, and it's important to make sure that they don't. In terms of donating, you know, I threw up that link on my Twitter, and in 2 days we raised $4,000, which was just incredible. And especially for a small organization like Insulin for All, that money is extremely impactful, especially in a COVID year like this. You know, it's a volunteer run organization, so any money they get is really, really important, and a big reason for that is they don't take pharmaceutical money, which allows them to kind of push for the advocacy and legislation, which they do, whereas some of the larger diabetes organizations do take pharmaceutical monies. So affordable insulin, which is the most important issue, is not at the forefront of the larger organization's mission, which is very disappointing. So, you know, I just wanted to participate and help out, and I sort of reached out. You know, actually, somebody on Twitter made me this kind of amazing little graphic, and it was sort of that Insulin for All. And I thought, well, I have this graphic, it's beautiful. Let me reach out and see if I can use this for this organization. And they said, well, we have this sort of open campaign running. So I set up a little page, and the Star Trek community showed up. And, you know, I'm not surprised, because it is an amazing community, but I am deeply, deeply honored and validated. You know, it's extremely validating when something that you have been a part of and invested so much of your sort of emotional and mental energy really shows up and proves you right. That's just a really validating moment for me personally. And even, you know, for people who couldn't or can't donate, sharing that thing, it was shared about around 1,000 times. That makes a huge difference, because just visibility for an organization like that is so important, because it doesn't have a huge ad campaign. It doesn't have the ability to put, you know, to run ads. They or do that kind of outreach. And getting them out there allows people to get involved who might have not known about it, to get educated, and to also receive aid, you know, or find places to receive aid, especially this year. That's been extremely important. And, you know, for everyone, you know, the sort of Insulin for All idea does not just mean for type 1 diabetics. It means for type 2 diabetics who use insulin, people with gestational diabetes who use insulin, all the different types. So, you know, that's extremely important as well. And I also believe, you know, in the disability community, when one organization can pass legislation, can move the conversation forward, that is a step forward for everybody in that community, you know, the larger disability community who who is trying to make their own strides in receiving the proper respect or proper care, proper support from the government or from legislative bodies. So, I think of it very targeted in terms of this little corner, this little bit of money. But every time that conversation moves forward, I think everybody moves forward as well. So you can find that on my Twitter if you like, and hopefully, we'll keep participating in that in new and fun ways.
Awesome.
That's
Thank you.
very great.
Thank you so much. As diabetes is 60% more prevalent in the African American community,
Indeed.
I feel like everybody on this chat knows someone that has diabetes or has had that conversation with their doctor or is being diagnosed. So when you threw that link up, I was like, yeah, here, I don't have a lot of money, but take some of it. And
part of the thing too about some of these larger organizations is their outreach into the Black community, their outreach into minority communities is largely performative. It's largely focused on white people, by white people, a lot of people who sort of already have the proper care, a lot of people who already have access to the proper medications, people who are just kind of looking for, day-to-day life support, who, that's great and everybody deserves support and care. But there's obviously such a lack of information out there, such a lack of resources out there. And so, organizations like this who are not focused on a very specific community with a huge amount of money going to that community, I think are really important to support. Because, when you have an international organization, they are obviously thinking on such a bigger scale about how can we do the most good for everybody, and not how can we support the people who are going to make sure who aren't invested in making insulin for all a reality, because it's not a reality for them.
That's cool.
Okay.
Grace, you ready?
I'm gonna go now.
You ready?
Yes.
Go.
So Noah, you talk a lot about your platform and how you're on Twitter, and that gives you a certain access to the fandom that not everybody involved with Star Trek has. So with you being on Twitter and you being on the show, has that had any effect on how you view the franchise and the fandom?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, look, I have a very, very small corner of Twitterdom, and I've seen the very, very dark corners as well. I'm not a woman on the internet, so I'm having a much easier time than a lot of other people on the internet would be having, including my wife. So I've really gotten a very, very rosy picture of, of the internet as a whole, and I feel very lucky for that, because it's been really fun for me. I haven't really had to encounter some of the things that Mary or Emily or Sonequa are going to have to encounter, and that's obviously an enormous privilege. I think that watching the smaller interactions of this little fan base who I'm seeing, it's just very clear to me how important the community is. I think that's such a huge aspect of the fandom is the community element, the people who you feel like you're really making a relationship with, the people who see each other at conventions, and that feeling of community, like, oh, I don't have a community where I feel safe back home, but when I go to this conventions, I'm making friends. I'm just there and I can be myself. And I've thought a lot about like why Star Trek, why conventions, why the hell was my mom interested in this shit? And I think a lot of it is, Star Trek is such a wide range of sort of inclusion of experience, and I think so much of it is, so many different people can bring their sort of like, the things that kept them separate from sort of, mainstream or whatever, like whether that's, liking science or STEM, whether that's sort of being a woman in a job who's never getting listened to, whether that's having a huge focus on like emotions and experience, I feel like at the convention that all sort of just comes together, and everyone who is on the outside but fighting to be recognized can come to those places, whether it's on the internet or whether it's at a convention in person, and look around and see their people there. And I just think that's sort of what it's all about. And I've been lucky to see that on the internet, and I think that, a lot of people see that and feel really threatened by it, and those people need to get over it.
I like that.
Very
I like
true.
that.
That's very true.
It's special for me because I'm a fan of your wife in the show, and then I didn't know you were married, so I just thought the way you looked at her in that scene, I was like, yeah, that's real. That's not fake. That's not for show. That's real. And then I saw you backstage, and I was like, yep, that's the real deal Holyfield right there.
It's so funny because we were shooting that scene. We were so excited. The very first scene where I come in and I'm like, yelling at her. She's like, I come in. We were both so excited to do this scene. We were like, this is like the moment where, Tilly and Rin are really going at it. And we hadn't acted together since college. It had been like 5 years. And I came in and I was just like, at 100% red hot, just like, where's this fucking captain? Who the hell are you? And she was over there, just like, who the hell do you think you are? And Jonathan Frakes was directing this episode. And so I came in hot, and Jonathan pulls me aside and he's like, I just think you need to like just bring it down just a little bit. I just don't think it's that. And so I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? I've like ruined my life. This is over. I'm going to quit acting. And so I did it, and it was good, and whatever, it was great, and I left the set, and me and Mary were walking to our trailer together. I was like, oh, babe, that was such a hard day. I can't believe what Jonathan said to me. And she goes, well, yeah, I had a really hard day too, because Jonathan said I was coming in way too hot, ready to fight you. And I was like, that's what he said to me. And so both of us sort of independently were like ready to just like tear it apart. And Jonathan Frakes is like, you guys need to calm the fuck down. You're not married in the show. You know what I mean? It's really funny. Really funny.
Speaking of Jonathan Frakes, once you got the part, was there anyone you were hoping to speak with, or has anyone in the community reached out, or are you waiting for the next un-COVID con to be like, I'm on stage with these people?
Yeah,
where's your gushy moment right there?
Gosh, I feel like it just sort of keeps happening over and over, like I didn't know I was going to be in an episode directed by Jonathan. So when I got the script and I saw his name on the thing, I was like, I need to go lay down for the rest of the week, and even just like 2 days ago when Kate Mulgrew is like, I choose you, Mary Wiseman, I like my jaw detached and it fell on the ground and I walked out the front door. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe this, and so it's kind of just keeps happening. I'm desperately trying to get Jeffrey Combs's attention and affection, and I will get it. He's definitely withholding, but I know he's seen my constant adoration and praise of him. So sooner or later, I will get a picture with him, and he will be dour, and I will be smiling a lot. So that's on the list, and I just think, I really hope I get to do all conventions, because for me that is, so much of it is like sort of closing the circle of being on the show or whatever. But there is that little piece where I want to get to interact in person with the fans, because being a Star Trek fan and having gone to conventions, I don't have the piece of my brain, which is what normal people have, which is when they see somebody in this costume, or they see something asking a question about 15 minutes into episode 27 of season 8, I don't have that piece of my brain where I'm like, what is wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, what did you do? Why are you doing this? I have the piece of my brain that is like, I love this person. This is so cool. I'm all in. Like, this is me, And so I want to be able to get to do that. I've had so much fun doing that on Twitter. I want to be able to get to do that in person, you know, because I feel like in my experience, when somebody of or on the show is excited, it just is such an amazing and such a fun moment, and to be able to get to have to participate in that is just like really, really exciting for me. And so I hope I get to do that at a convention someday, and I also get to kind of continue to like straddle this really weird line of like having one leg on the fan side of the fence and the other leg on the show side of the fence, and like I want to do the thing where I'm sitting at the table and then talking to somebody, and then I say like, look over there, like, do you see that? Like they're sitting next to me, could you believe it, you know? So I don't know, you know, I feel like it's just going to be a constant. There's no really one person who I will like absolutely lose it for, because I'm going to lose it forever.
For all.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. And so you understand that whole moment where I was like, wait, you answered?
I do, because that's how I felt when Kate Mulgrew liked my tweet. You know what I mean? I'm like texting my mom, I'm screen capping it, I'm printing it out and like putting it in a time capsule, you know?
Hanging on the wall.
Valid points. I think we would all do that.
Just so you know, Noah, that in my house the other day, Mary liked a tweet that I did, and I showed it to my daughter, who had the exact same reaction you probably had with Kate
Absolutely.
Mulgrew. And it was just like the rest of the night, she's like, "Oh my God, Mom, do you know what Dad did today?"
Absolutely.
How does that feel for you to see us like gush for you?
It's totally unjustified and unearned. I'm just a freaking dork. Like, I don't know what is wrong with you, but I love it. You know what I mean? It's fun. It's fun to really. It's this weird thing where it's like, did I really do that? Like, is this just like a show that I made with my friends and then I watched? And so it's fun when other people are like, I saw you on it. I like it. You know, it really sort of like is like, oh yeah, like I am a part of this thing. I didn't like sneak onto the set and nobody told me to leave. Like I am, you know, a part of it. So it's gratifying. It's deeply, deeply gratifying. And it's gratifying for me when I get to participate in as well. You know, I've been sort of watching Mary interact with fans for 5 years now, wanting to be like, where do I fit in this thing? You know, I want to be where the fan is and like be excited, and also like be where Mary is and like be excited with them. So it was just very confusing. And now I kind of feel like I have my own niche, and I'm sure Mary is like so relieved, because she's like, oh my God, thank God he's not like, go take a picture with them. She's like, what do you mean?
Oh. How did that interaction with your wife go when she got the part and you're interacting? You're like, do you understand how people are going to love you and
Yes.
idolize you?
It was so funny because so she did an audition, and I was like, well, I have to read this tape with you. You know, it was I have to read the tape with you. I read it. It was like a bunch of technobabble. I was like, nail the technobabble and it'll be great. You know, so she did, and we didn't really think about it. It just sort of like went out into the ether and disappeared. And I was at a dinner with my dad and my cousin, and she was coming from somewhere and met us, and she sat down next to me and was like nodding along to whatever idiot story I was telling, and I finished, and she sort of leaned over and was like, I booked Star Trek. And I was like, what? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? And she's like, yeah, I just am on Star Trek now. And I was like, oh my God, well, yeah, I guess we need to get married immediately.
I felt like that happened.
You know, my mother is like all in on you now. She will disown me if something happens, so I need to make sure. And in terms of like what to prepare for, I was like, it's not, I can't try and get her to watch everything. She has like that sort of general cultural understanding, but I showed her 2 episodes. Or 2 things, I should say. I showed her The Offspring, which is like my favorite Star Trek episode, and I feel like is the epitome of Star Trek for me, and also a version of Star Trek that I felt like she, would really relate to as an actor, as a creator, as an artist, or whatever. And I think that really resonated with her. And then I also showed her the film Trekkies, and I was like, look, this is it. This is what I'm talking about. I can't explain it to you. You need to watch this. It's sort of like the glory and the misery of Trekdom all wrapped in one. This sort of sincerity and just full on dorkiness. Like, this is it. And she sort of watched it and was like, okay, like, like, I think it really laid it out where it's like, you're in for it now, but in the best possible version of it. This is the best possible version of your in for it now. And I think that's borne out pretty well. So that was I feel like that was good prep work for her in terms of what she could expect.
I think that's super brave of you to have shown her Trekkies. I've been married for almost 20 years, and I'm still like avoiding showing it to my wife.
It's time. I'm telling you, Travis, it's time. I just, it's just such a, actually in a weird way, like now, watching it now, I'm like, oh, this is almost normal now. Like fan art and dorkiness and discussion, like it's a cosplay, wearing your costume to work. It's like, it's almost quaint. But watching it in 97, it was like, oh my God, like, what am I a part of? Who are these people? And what was so funny? The guy, that kid who,
I was just thinking about him.
He has that sort of iconic moment where I'm on the phone, and but slams it down. At some point, we were watching a ton of Storage Wars. We were watching a ton of Storage Wars, and there was one episode where the sort of white trash Storage Wars people like found a phaser, like a limited edition phaser with a thing. Like, what the hell is this? Is this Star Trek or whatever? And they found that guy, and they brought that guy on as an adult to appraise it. He came on in full costume. He was still loving Star Trek. He knew the exact stuff about this thing. I was like, oh, hell yes. Like, that moment did not turn him away from Star Trek. It didn't embarrass him out of it. It was like, no, this is who I am. I'm going to continue being who I am. And actually, like, now I'm the cool one, and you guys are the fucking losers who don't know what this is.
Exactly. He's one of the was one of the ship designers on Ron Moore's Galactica.
I mean, how cool.
Like, his life just like blew up after that.
Amazing. It's so cool.
Everybody asked all their questions?
All done.
I think we got them all.
He spoke about so much. Is there anything do you
want to ask us questions?
Yeah, do you want to ask us questions?
I'll be able to handle that, but okay.
Gosh. What questions would I have? Well, what do you all want to see in either Discovery or in sort of the continuing genesis of new Star Trek?
I definitely want you and your wife to be shipped. So, it's perfect. It's there.
Yeah, it's funny.
She's a commander. It's totally legal. Let the ladies have fun.
Mm-hmm. Not just Burnham.
Not just Burnham. I want Saru to bang the Vulcan. I want it all.
I want more to know more of the characters on Discovery in particular. I want to get to know more about the secondary characters. I want to know more about Reese. I want to know more about Bryce. I want, as Marisha is so appropriate to us, I want a 10 forward like space where we see what they do when they're not doing things related to the operation.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think like there is definitely a space for 10 forward, especially now that you're in the future, because there was in the sort of earlier iterations, it didn't totally make sense to like, kind of drop a 10 forward style thing in there in this sort of timeline then. But now I don't see why not, especially now that they sort of have a home base to go to as well. I think that's very cool. I like that. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, there was, just to piggyback on what Grace just said, there's a moment one time when Reese and Bryce had this high five, and I just read so much into that interaction. Like those two, I just imagine like on like hijinks and all kinds of stuff. I could just I'd love to see more of that.
They're great. They're all great people too. That's so great about the Bridge Crew is they're all these kind of young, amazing Canadian actors who are just really, really good people as well. So just as them as actors, I think they can absolutely kind of handle that as well.
That's cool.
I would like to see more body positivity in Star Trek because I was thinking about, wow, which character would I cosplay as? And I don't want to wear tight spandex. So I was thinking about the uniforms that I see. And I'm like, wow, I would really like to see more body positivity because even as your wife has experienced, people say really mean negative comments. And I just feel like if we had more representation for people who are plus size, that it would be really great to see on Star Trek. We even had this conversation on Twitter a few months ago where we were like, in real life, Mary is normal sized person. So what about those of us who are larger? So if you know, I would like to see more of us on the show because then it gives a better representation of the fandom.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think too, I think in general, when there's one of any one of something, it puts so much pressure on that person, I mean, you guys know, to like be the representative, of a whole thing, and it's limiting because no one person is a representative of any larger group, obviously. So I love that, of showing. I think in a way, like that's how you begin to normalize things. So like with the LGBTQ plus representation on the show, having one is like is almost a token, but having 5 is showing like, this is normal. The end.
Right.
The end. And I really think that is a place that could really the show could benefit it, and I think the kind of fandom and culture fandom in general would benefit from that as well. Yeah, I really like that.
How interesting that you said that, though, because now I'm just imagining that interaction with Stamets and Adira to go a different way, where Stamets is like, "All right, cool. Let me introduce you to these other members of the crew, and she can be part of a community." And the whole thing kind of like, "Okay, cool. This is okay."
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question. Have you listened to our podcast before?
I haven't. I usually, to be honest with you guys, I usually don't listen to any of the podcasts that I'm going to do, just because I don't want to come in with like too much of like a preconceived notion of like how I should like fit in or something. So I haven't, but now I think I will. Now that I've done it, I can go back and listen.
Just
What
shoot
I-
your
No,
shot.
the shot I want shot like the most is for the cast to listen to the podcast because
Yes.
that don't listen to anything else. Listen to episode 3 with Maura because that was a touching episode for me. I know you guys get a whole bunch of hate mail, a bunch of hate speech, and it can get tiresome, and you can get tired of the fans.
Yeah.
And get very jaded to it. That moment there, that one moment, I think speaks volumes.
Yeah,
Ask
I
them
mean,
to listen so that they know that we see what you're doing. Some people see it. We see you. Thank you.
yeah.
I'm happy to have you. I'm happy to trek with anyone that loves to trek. All right.
Noah, you
last
have
question.
officially been invited to the cookout.
Oh yeah,
We'll make you
when
a
he
plate.
when he
Come to the
retweeted the
cookout.
WAP
You can
when I was
come
talking about his wife, I was like, yep,
Well, listen,
Come stick around.
Captain Kelly.
yeah, well, we'll all meet at a convention and we'll hang out there. We'll do hugs there, and I'm looking forward to it, and yeah, it's just fuck that. That fucking sucks. That's bullshit.
We love you. We definitely love your wife. There's a whole lot of thirst chatting about it. Any
I'm sorry,
final
but I'm
questions?
not really sorry.
Yeah, well, I
Sorry,
mean,
About the
I've participated way too much in that, so I totally get it. I think that's everything. Definitely me. Do you have any last questions?
Yeah. So as a DM,
Yes, there we
I
go.
have a paladin half orc.
Mm-hmm.
that I'm supposed to play in like 3 more hours,
Okay.
who has an issue with height. She kind of came in on that short side, and she worships death, and she uses a garrote. Uh, any suggestions on not how to kill my teammates?
Uh, paladins are there to really push their teammates to the brinks. So, here's what I think: as long as you in the battle, as long as you really blast that divine smite and healing hands people, then you're good to go. You'll be fine.
I'll be selective.
Yeah, you don't have to cast Cure Wounds if you don't want to. Just remember.
Ah, okay. I
Nerd
want to
alert.
say nerd. Hey.
We're well past that. Sorry.
We're
past
way-
that.
We're on a Star Trek podcast.
Nerd alert. It's so full of nerds in here.
Exactly.
I put on my headpiece.
I'm gonna
Put on
stay
my head-
silent. I used to do D&D years ago,
Still time.
and
D&D
Yeah.
was a line for me. I was like, that's just too nerdy. And
I
look
have
at
like
me.
the worst hands for like rolling die. Like it's terrible.
There you go. Yeah, I too, when I fail at D&D, I blame it on the dice as well.
Nice.
Sure.
Get yourself a nice tower.
Yeah,
Get yourself one of those
it's
regular
cursed,
spinning
clearly.
dice. You don't gotta
Clearly
roll them.
cursed.
Everyone, please thank Noah for coming. We're not worthy.
Oh,
We're
you
not
guys,
worthy.
thank you so much for having me.
Please
Thank
remember
you.
us.
I will.
Please
What a great
remember.
conversation.
This is the highlight of my 2020. I don't know
Oh.
about
Yeah, this is like,
Ending on
I
a
got
good note,
engaged,
right?
and I think this is like almost my
Do
personal
not
life
tell your
engagement.
fiance that.
Yes, please. For my sake, don't tell him that.
No, he's a very big Star Wars fan, so any interaction with anyone Star Wars would probably
I
beat
see.
me out real
I
fast.
understand. Well, thankfully, there's
thank
nothing
you.
going on in that franchise either. No problems
nothing
there
at
either.
all.
Oh, no. That's a whole other story. Thank you for coming.
Take care.
And
All right, you guys will
Thank
live
you.
long and prosper. Be in touch.
Take care.
bye.
No,
You
thank you.
can't see me, but I'm doing it with both hands.
There we
Yes.
go. Right
Oh,
on. Right on.
the bear. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Adios.
Bye.